Good.
Good.
All right. Good morning, everybody. The time is 10 a.m. on June 16th, 2026. This is the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council meeting. I'm John Belamowitz, presiding member, calling us to order. Mr. Spinks, will you call the roll for us?
Yes, sir. Chair Belamowitz.
Present.
Mr. Bridges.
Present.
Dr. Cartwright.
Present.
Chair Hallbauer.
Present.
Chair Hampton.
Present.
Ms. Pryor.
Present.
Dr. Taylor.
Present.
You got a quorum.
Very good. Appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you for. I love that we have no technological issues this morning. So hopefully we will continue this good start. We've called to order. I don't have a whole lot on the chair's report other than to congratulate our new chair of the MFT board, Mr. Lee Hampton, who is here with us today. Congratulations on your appointment as chair. We'll jump right into public comments. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person unless otherwise directed by the presiding member. At the discretion of the presiding member, comments on a specific topic may be heard at a designated time later on at that relevant agenda item. And please note for everybody in the public and watching that we may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during public comment that is not on the agenda. If it is on the agenda, then that is a little different. If it is not, we may decide to put it on the matter on a future agenda potentially. So with that, I have two comments in the room. Online, use the raise your hand function and we'll get to you in a minute. So in the room, I've got Philip Crum. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Whatever one you like, whichever one looks best. And if you will state your name for the record, who you represent, and make sure that your microphone is on there. You should have a light when you hit it.
Good morning, everybody.
We can hear you. Thank you. All right.
Name is Philip Crum. I'm a Joe Citizen, co-founder of AMP. The last 2 years have seen new additions to all four boards, a renewed devotion to purpose, especially by the public members, willing to question the professional members. That's been extremely encouraging, and I hope that trend continues. That our new counselor development pipeline has been overrun by ideologues is the biggest problem this profession faces. We're awarding master's degrees to political activists who base their mental health practices on political theory, a group empathy mindset, and feelings. We're licensing them, and the people of Texas get to pay for it in more than one way, and that has to change. Given that your primary state mandate is the protection of the citizens of Texas, your number one issue right now and for the foreseeable future should be cleansing your licensee ranks of ideological incompetency. We have a very big problem that may not yet be represented in the complaint metrics, but Texas can lead the country in this effort if we have the stomach for it. At the last LPC board meeting, a licensee phoned in her comments immediately following my own. In a somewhat condescending tone, she asked if the public was allowed to make public comment at board meetings. She was clearly annoyed that I had said some things she apparently didn't agree with. Unfortunately, I think that represents a pervasive attitude in the profession towards accountability to the public. There are currently some promising measures underway at the federal level to clean up the academic pipeline, beginning with the accrediting organizations, flowing through the teaching institutions themselves and the professional organizations. That's being done through Executive Order 14279 in the Department of Education, combined with measures being taken at the state level, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. I'd like to see the appropriate BHEC leadership talking to legislators about ways to raise competency requirements. It's the legislator's job to legislate, and it's BHEC's job to protect the public, so I don't see this as lobbying as much as proactive requests for the tools needed to carry out the agency's primary directive. There are ways to do that. We're happy to discuss it if anyone's willing. We need more citizens to do the same, work with legislators to demand a higher level of competency from our licensees, and we're working on that. That's not racist. It's not oppressive. Competence needs to be drastically redefined at the academic level, and it will be. Then either you have what it takes to meet requirements or you don't. Admission to this field should be based on merit, not fairness and feelings. We realize that cleaning up the academic pipeline is not your responsibility, nor is it within your power, but policing current licensees is, within the limitations of current state code and board regulations. Given Senate Bills 14 and 12, Paxton's opinion stating that licensees are healthcare providers, and BHEC's own public 4-page guideline statement of March 13th, there's a lot we can do about enforcement, and we need to be making sober examples of non-compliant licensees when and if those infractions occur. I'm very glad to see that adding those recent bills to the rule book is on today's agenda. More of that, please.
That's time.
Bottom line is cleaning up the academic structure is not your problem, but enforcing state code is. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Crum. All right, next I have Kathleen Mills. Thank you for being here.
Thank you
All right.
for being here. I'm Kathleen Mills, licensed professional counselor supervisor and co-founder of AMP. I'm a survivor of the dishes era regime's good old boy complaint process. That faith-killing experience has given me a very rich, real-world backdrop against which I can confidently evaluate the progress BHEC has made over the past 6 years. You have put this profession back on the administrative rails it has lacked for so long, and I thank you for that. But we face a much larger problem now. Our profession has been under attack since at least 2000 for its very soul, and I would like to expand on the 2 comments Philip said earlier. He mentioned the bar of the competency needs to be raised, and that is what we are working on. Number one, things I would like to see, we are endorsing additional legislation to bolster punitive options for infractions SBs 12 and 14. One of our members, Rebecca Smith, is heading this effort and will be resubmitting a bill this summer. While legacy professional organizations, independent CEs, work together to educate their constituents on how to circumvent the law and awarding CE credit for doing so, I have a certificate, we're working toward informing our membership on how the higher education system is currently being cleansed of DEI and social justice as per EO 12479. Philip also stated that there's a lot BHEC can do about the enforcement of both SB 12 and 14, and various opinions and BHEC statements that have been made are being ignored. 3 things I would like to see happen. 1, make it clear to all licensees through the appropriate entries in the rule books and penalty matrices exactly what the outcomes will be for violating 12 and 14. Repeatedly distribute a statement that the BHEC rulebook is the official code of ethics in Texas. If secondary ethics documents one chooses to follow promote activities that are illegal in Texas, you may lose your license. Then, number 3, issue repeated public statements on behalf of you that any professional organization, coalition, CE provider, or licensed individual who openly promotes illegal activities to BHEC licensees runs the very risk of punitive action as outlined in state code, including a potential loss of license as each case warrants. Our accrediting institutions, grad programs, and legacy organizations have surrendered to an ideology, and we don't have another 20 years to wait and hope things turn out okay. That is why we started AMP, so conservative, God-fearing, holistic therapists have a place to go for healing and direction without feeling like they've been attacked by colleagues. I'm inviting you to buy a ticket to attend our fall conference so you can see what else is out there, what mental health counselors should be talking about. Protecting Joe Citizen may include some distasteful activities, but that's where we find ourselves. I encourage you to discuss these things privately, then openly, as soon as possible, and take whatever actions are necessary to proactively uphold the law and protect our clients. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Okay, does that conclude comment in the room? I believe so. All right, we'll go online now. Use the raise your hand function. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Spinks to run that.
If you have public comment and you're in attendance virtually, just use the raise hand feature. We'll start out with Dr. Dawn Irons. Dr. Irons, you have public comments you want to give?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. If you'll we've got your name, if anybody that you represent, and take it away.
Okay. My name is Dr. Dawn Irons. I'm a counselor, educator, and LPC supervisor in Denver City, Texas. I'm growing more concerned with the train wreck that has become our counselor education system. I spoke on this last month, and I'm back again today to address the issue of competency and basic skill training within our Texas counselor training programs. Just yesterday, I had to teach a student counselor from a Texas program how to advocate for herself. Her program required students to be ACA members. I had her appeal based on KCREP's definition of a professional counseling organization and request that they accept her membership in the Association for Mental Health Professionals instead. Thankfully, her request was granted based on Texas law and KCREP definitions. I explained how Texas laws and BHEC LPC rules are not being taught in these Texas training programs, and that with Senate Bill 12 and 14 now being codified into law, that adherence to ACA Code of Ethics is actually training on how to lose your license in Texas. My role as a supervisor has become more challenging in having to retrain newly licensed associates to unlearn the ideologically driven agendas in schools and to learn the BHEC rules that govern their license. I want to thank BHEC for clarifying that in terms of gender affirming care for minors, we will not be engaging in child abuse, but rather treating and exploring gender confusion. Affirmation is for adults making adult decisions, not for children who are at their most vulnerable among us. Research has shown time and time again that if children are not, quote, affirmed in their confusion, that upwards of 90% of them will align with their biological reality. Puberty is rough. We've all been through it, but we have over 75 years of Erickson's developmental stages showing that the ages of 12 to 18 are normal developmental stages called identity versus confusion. I want to thank BHEC for protecting Texas children that are going through normal developmental stages, and that if left to go through puberty, 90% plus will land in alignment with their biological reality. No one cares what choices adults are making about their sexuality, but thank you for protecting the most vulnerable among us, the children going through normal developmental processes. And when affirmed in their confusion is exactly what the state legislature is calling child abuse, because that is child abuse. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mr. Francis, did you have public comments you wanted to give?
Yes. Good morning, members of BHEC. My name is Will Francis, and I'm speaking today representing the National Association of Social Workers, Texas chapter. I'd like to share briefly on two issues. First, we do support the changes to 781.313 being considered today. And secondly, I'd like to comment on the recent Supreme Court ruling, Charles v. Salazar, and NASW Texas' perspective on the ruling. We actually agree with Justice Jackson and her dissenting opinion, which states that no core principle of our First Amendment jurisprudence leads inexorably to the conclusion that it violates the Constitution for a state to prevent its licensed talk therapists from using speech to harm minors in their care. NASW Texas remains steadfast in its view that conversion therapy is not just talk therapy, but a specific intervention that has been factually proven to cause more harm than good. However, NASW Texas does agree with the majority decision from the Supreme Court declaring that overall, talk therapy is pure speech protected by the First Amendment, rather than professional conduct subject to regulation. This case is a vital reminder that the therapeutic relationship is grounded in private, professional dialogue, and it is a space that must remain free from state interference. As social workers, our primary commitment is to the well-being of our clients. For therapy to be effective, it requires a foundation of absolute trust in the freedom to explore any issue a client brings to the table. Whether a session involves navigating LGBTQ plus identity, discussing gender-affirming care, or exploring reproductive health care options, these are clinical and personal matters and not political ones. The child's decision underscores that the state's regulatory power should not be used to dictate or chill the content of these private conversations. When the state imposes rules that restrict what can be discussed or how care is framed, it undermines clinical efficacy, client safety, and professional conduct and ethics. We urge the council to continue to uphold the sanctity of the therapist-client relationship. Texas social workers, based on the First Amendment principles reinforced by Charles v. Salazar, can now continue to provide ethical, evidence-based, and compassionate care that our diverse communities deserve. And the content and how therapists engage with clients in those spaces is clearly protected from any undue regulation by the state. Thank you for your time and for your dedication and support for the profession.
Thank you for your comments.
Dr. Lori Hollingsworth, do you have public comments you wanted to give?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely. Can you?
Barely.
There we go. Try again.
Okay.
There we
Is
go.
that better? All right, here we go. Good morning, Chair, Council members, and staff. My name is Dr. Lori Hollingsworth, and I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor. Today, I am here in my capacity as the Texas Counseling Association, TCA, liaison to BHEC. The Texas Counseling Association supports most of the proposed Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors rules, but is concerned about the shift in supervision requirement in proposed Rule 681.92 from a minimum to an average of 4 hours per month. Consistent supervision is essential for client safety and associate development. Allowing an average could result in periods without oversight. We urge the Council to consider the implications of this change for both supervisors and supervisees. At a recent licensing board meeting, comments were made that suggested that legacy organizations are encouraging members to not follow state rules and statutes. TCA is a proud legacy organization with over 75 years of supporting counselors, advocating for the right of all Texas citizens to have access to mental health care. TCA wishes to assure the licensing boards and the licensees that we expect and encourage our members to follow state rules and statutes, use research-based interventions, and compassionate care that aligns with the highest ethical standards of the counseling profession. TCA sincerely appreciates the Council and its staff for their unwavering dedication and professionalism. We recognize the considerable time and expertise that both public and professional members invest in fulfilling the Council's mission and supporting the individual member boards. TCA values the opportunity to participate in public dialogue and contribute to the ongoing development of rules and regulations that shape our practice as mental health professionals. Our organization is preparing for the upcoming Professional Growth Conference at the Kalahari Resort in Round Rock, scheduled for November the 11th through the 13th. We are grateful to Daryl Spinks and the LPC board members for their willingness to present to our members. Thank you again for your ongoing commitment to addressing the needs of mental health professionals and serving the citizens of Texas. Your dedication to excellence is deeply valued by TCA and its members.
Thank you, Dr. Hollingsworth. Would you mind submitting a written comment for me at the next LPC board meeting with the suggested language you would like to see for that rule change? That would be helpful for us.
Yes, sir. Can do that. Thank you.
Dr. Aaron Robb, do you have public comments you want to give?
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here this morning. It's interesting to hear our initial speakers talking about accountability and following the rules. The issue I wanted to address this morning to BHEC was about following its own rules. While most of the board is familiar with me, I am Dr. Aaron Robb. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor, and I've been working with court-connected cases since I left graduate school and began working at a children's advocacy center in Texas. I want to talk today about the handling of complaints involving court-appointed practitioners under BHEC's own rules. These rules exist for a reason. We see families that are in courts that are arguing about care of their children, and by definition, at least half of the parents involved in those cases are going to be unhappy at the end with whatever the court does. Often both parents are unhappy with the decisions that judges are forced to make about splitting care of kids. BHEC enacted a rule that said they were no longer going to accept complaints involving active court cases unless there were certain conditions met. And I've now heard from dozens of other professionals who, like myself, are seeing that's not happening, that these complaints are still being handled in a way that we get letters that say you have received a complaint, which immediately triggers a insurance reporting requirement for us and begins to ratchet up to the tune of usually thousands of dollars of costs for the professionals involved. This is one of the reasons that there are so few people willing to stick their hand into the meat grinder that is the family court system as a professional. And the way BHEC is failing to follow its own rules is ultimately making this situation worse. I see folks every day who say, no, I don't want to take this case. We see, if anybody's on any of the Texas Facebook groups, the number of people who say, my associate just got a subpoena, or I just got a subpoena, and I don't want to go to court. How do I essentially get out of this case? How do I not deal with these folks? And unfortunately, these are the children that need our help the most. Children in high conflict family litigation are at greater risk for suicidal ideation, non-suicidal self-injury, anxiety, depression, disordered eating, personality disorders, all of those things. And it would help if BHEC actually followed the rule it had adopted. If we no longer got these complaint letters that initially trigger, again, the insurance reporting and the thousands of dollars that ends up costing us as practitioners when we've got a parent who's unhappy with what the court has had to say about their parenting. We're losing folks at a time where we have a shortage of mental health professionals that are competent and committed to working with these folks. And frankly, it would reduce the burden for BHEC itself and the financial issues that are going on there. Y'all could concentrate on cases that were more appropriate for investigation. This is not immunity from complaints. There are procedures for that. This is not ignoring misconduct. This is following the procedures that BHEC itself has adopted. And while this is a heck of a lot better than the public flogging days of the old LPC board, where every single complaint got you drugged down to Austin for a public hearing, regardless of its merits, this is still something that we should be doing a better job to follow our own licensing rules. And that starts not here in the profession, but down there in Austin with y'all. Thank you very much.
I have a question. Don't go away, Dr. Rob. This is John Belamowitz. Number one, for your work with child advocacy centers, high five, and I commend you. I've seen the work of our own CAC in my home county, and I just could not be more proud of the work that y'all do. It's truly where the rubber hits the road in intervening in a kid or family's life. So I want to just point that out and appreciate that. I remember this when we were dealing with these rules. I came from the psychology board, and when it came to child custody cases, it's been a huge issue. We've seen the process weaponized, and that's not what the complaint process is for. The complaint process is to find bad practitioners who are not following the rules or the law, and we will deal with that. My question for you, though, is, I mean, when a complaint's filed, we have to do some cursory information gathering because surely court-appointed work isn't the only thing. Can you help me understand, like, what I understand you're pointing out a problem that these letters are coming out when we're looking for more information, if it's court-appointed or not. What would you like to see?
And I want to first say thank you to Mr. Romig, who I've talked to about this some as well. Letters that aren't letters of complaint, letters that don't automatically trigger the insurance reporting. To get a letter that says, we have received information about person X. Is this a case that is involving active court litigation? I've seen complaints that go out where the complainant has lied to the board about there being an active court order in place for services, and it's rolled straight to investigation. If the first step is to inquire, is there an active court order? Is there an active case going on? Those those regulatory rules that y'all have set up that would prevent moving forward with a complaint, ask those questions first, instead of you have received a complaint and then demanding a response to the complaint, which is how the letters are currently written. And I understand it's a huge amount of inertia to change how a lot of those automated processes go. I would also ask that you front load having some of the more experienced attorneys at the board look at some of those complaints rather than some of the investigators. I once at a public hearing had an investigator who said, well, we pursued this complaint because where there's smoke, there's fire. There's also firemen where there's fire. And for those of us who serve as the firemen in the family court system, trying to put out the flames of conflict, to then being treated as if we're arsonists is not helpful by these investigators.
Understood. Okay. Thank you for answering the question. I'm good. All right. Moving on.
Dr. Bradley Craig, you have public comments you want to give?
I do, thank you. And no, I'm not doctor, but I appreciate the elevation. My name is Brad Craig, and I'm a licensed social worker here in Texas. And I want to express the same concerns that Dr. Rob was indicating about 22 TAC 884.4. And I'll make it brief. It's if our board says a complaint can't be filed for somebody doing a active investigation or serving as an active PF, then I'm concerned when several of my colleagues have been contacting me saying that they're under investigation while they're doing the custody evaluation or while they're serving as the PF. And if that's our rule, I understand if we have a clear violation. If we have a parenting facilitator who's having sex with their client, we need to intervene in that. But if we're having a parenting facilitator who's doing their work appropriately, following the guidelines, and our clear language in our license about what a PF or custody evaluator can and can't do in Texas, then it interferes in the process of them being able to do the investigation if we receive a letter that says we're going to go ahead and continue to investigate. So I again want to advocate for, if that's going to be the rule, that if it's a current case, there's not going to be an investigation, that we respond to the person that's being investigated with a letter saying, we have found that this is currently under court, and that until we receive a ruling from the judge, we will not further investigate, or until the individual or until the case has been closed. I'm going to acknowledge I was not a huge fan of this rule in the first place. I think it's appropriate for clients to be able to, at any point, file a complaint. However, over time, I've learned the advantage. For example, if I'm a PF on a case, then once the complaint's filed, I almost have to remove myself from the case because of potential bias. And so this rule has helped protect some of my colleagues. I haven't had a complaint filed during this time. So I would just ask that we make it really clear that if we're going to have this rule, that we implement it. If we're not going to, that we have some clear criteria for what transitions from being an investigation to not an investigation, so that we can continue our work with families if we're a court-appointed individual. And I really appreciate BHEC for everything that it's done. I've certainly done investigations for BHEC. I've certainly maintained a close relationship with BHEC, and I do a lot of professional seminars where I'm using our rules to cite what we can and can't be doing with families. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments.
There are no more raised hands. Mr. Chair, that concludes public comment.
All right. Thank you to everybody who participated in the comment process. We'll go on to informational items. I'll turn that over to staff to lay out the things that they would like to highlight out of your packets.
Just 1 second, sir. Okay, so starting out with the informational items, most of this stuff is kind of self-evident. I'm just going to hit the highlights for you here. We have provided you with both Q2 and Q3 performance measures and calculations for this fiscal year. The one thing I would point out, and I'm going to look mainly at the Q3 because it's the most recent. We are still under 30 days for processing all applications overall, so that's very good. Moving on to the report on enforcement operations under 4D. At one point, we had hit over 1,000 pending complaints here, which is red alert territory. When we did that, you'll see some of our LAR requests are based upon the increasing number of complaints that we are receiving. But when we did that, we took some kind of immediate action to try to attack that number and get it back down. I can't do anything about the number of complaints that are coming in, but we were trying to get the number of pending complaints down. One of the things we did is we looked at the boards that were receiving the majority of the complaints, that being the LPC and the social work boards. And we initiated board member review for a lot of the LPC complaints. In other words, what we do is we take a professional board member. Once the investigator has completed his or her report, we then provide that report to the selected board member. They look at it. They make a determination of whether they think there's been it's just a snapshot determination. Has there been a violation? If so, send this agreed order out, this settlement offer out. If they don't think that there has been a violation, they recommend dismissal, or they can just recommend immediate transfer to an ISC. So that person, it's just a snapshot. It's just made to get things through very quickly so that cases don't get hung up in the process. We did that. We began the ISC rotation, which all the boards have now adopted that. We're pulling from all the board members to handle all the ISCs, and we've conducted quite a few ISCs, a lot. I know we've done a lot. Robert has had many days where he's walked in my office cross-eyed from the number of ISCs he's done that particular day.
May I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
In terms of, we passed a rule that says that board members can participate, but they don't have to.
Correct.
That's passed and that's in place now, correct?
Correct.
How's that actually been working out?
Yeah, we're using a lot of board members still.
Okay.
We have to, just with the sheer volume of complaints. It's been working well. So we're able to get complaints scheduled. We're not getting hung up on, well, I'm not available on that day. We'll have to move the whole ISC to a different day. No, we're just going to the next board member that is available. So it's been working really well.
The point is board members are still pretty involved.
Heavily involved.
Okay.
Yeah, heavily involved.
That was a concern. I remember in those discussions. So.
Yeah. And then we have also recently kind of reallocated some of our attorneys. For example, Julie Bolanos, one of our staff attorneys, she's an LCSW. It doesn't make sense to have Julie working on psychology cases. We got a social work. So Julie handles the social work stuff. So we've kind of reallocated or realigned our attorneys to kind of what their natural skill sets are there. So those are some of the ways. And as a result of that, we've got the number of pending complaints back down to 899. So, and as you can see from the enforcement report that Alfonso generates for me, it's the colored slides that we have, the PDF presentations. You know, we cleared 362 complaints in Q3 and we took in 294. So we are now clearing more complaints than what we're bringing in, even though the inflow is higher than what it has ever been historically. So we're doing what we can to tackle that. I'll just be candid. I have some concerns about, we're kind of running at red line. So I have some concerns about how long it's not really a good idea to build a complaint or enforcement system around such heavy involvement of the board members in the types of functions that we're using them on, like that board member review. That's really more what you would use like a professional reviewer for, but because we just simply cannot afford to contract with that many people, we're going to have to use the assets that we have available to us, and that's the Dr. Taylors and Dr. Stubblefields of the world. So, but anyway.
And thank them for their service.
Yeah.
Daryl, are we seeing an increase in dismissals?
Yes. Yes, we are seeing an increase in dismissals.
Do you feel like we're getting more complaints that are more frivolous?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. I will say the more I look at it, it does look like the increase in complaints is tied pretty closely to the increase in licensee population, the licensee population growth that we're seeing. Although it's, I would say there's still a little bit of unexplained growth in complaints there that don't tie directly to the licensee population growth. But I would say the vast majority of it is just attributable to the natural licensee population growth that we're seeing.
Didn't you tell me one time that a guy filed a complaint on his neighbor because he blew leaves in his yard?
Yes.
Yeah. And he found out that he was a counselor?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll add, anecdotally, I'm seeing a lot more dismissals of people filing complaints against former friends or family members, or, you know, things that are clearly outside of any sort of professional relationship. It's just, I knew this guy, he was mean to me once, and I'm now going to want to file a complaint against them. I'm seeing a lot more of those types of complaints. Yes.
Hey, Daryl.
Yes, sir.
You sort of touched on it, but can you give us a little bit of update on you like to call them levers that you've pulled? How have those been in line with what you were hoping the results would be, and about how long do you see those current levers having to stay pulled until we get things down to a level that you're just more comfortable with?
The levers are going to have to stay pulled until we can get some additional staff attorneys at a minimum, and the professional reviewers that we're going to be asking for in the LAR. We're going to go over that in a minute, but I don't, given just the influx of complaints, I don't see how we can move those levers back to where they were before until we get some additional help on board.
And we may be getting to this when we discuss the LAR, but are we building an effective, a very compelling case for the LAR with showing we have all the levers that we have available have been pulled, and that's why we are coming to the ledge with these exemplary requests.
Yeah, I mean, we are taking, I would say the way we are using board members is probably an extraordinary usage of you guys. You're really, you typically are used as judges, not investigatory or professional review type staff. We're almost using you like the medical board has a medical director that reviews complaints that come in to see whether or not those complaints meet or fall short of the standard of care. That's basically what we are using you guys as now. And that's not really what you're intended to be used as, but we have to do it in order to address the number of complaints that we've got. And unless and until we can get the clinical reviewers that we're asking for in the LAR to sub in for you so that we can put you back into more of a judicial role, we're going to have to continue to use you that way. Now,
are you familiar with how the medical board was granted that position? And like how long ago, and was it similar circumstances that we're handling right now?
I don't know. It's been that way ever since I've worked for the state.
Okay.
It's been at least 15 years. So, but kind of my concern is, and why I don't think that is a permanent solution, is you guys, it knocks you out of having of being able to set in judgment for somebody. Let's say that as a reviewer, you look at it and go, yeah, this person did something bad. And you kick it, you say, staff send out an agreed order. And they're like, go pound sand. I'm not signing off on that. This thing goes through SOA. Now you cannot set in judgment of that person once it comes back from SOA. So now I have lost one part of my board, and it's the professional expertise part. So, I'm down in the number of terms of professional folks that can look at it on the back end when it comes in from SOA. That's not good. Plus, remember, it would still have to go through an ISC. This review that we're doing is not the ISC. It's still going to have to go through an informal settlement conference. We could lose board members there. So we're in effect winnowing down the number of people who may be available to set in final judgment on a particularly bad case on the back end. That is not a good position to put yourself in. And then quite frankly, you guys don't get paid for it. And this does take a big chunk out of your day to set and read all this stuff. So that is just not, there's only so much you can ask of a volunteer board member. I know folks out in TV land are like, well, why can't they just hear it? And I'm like, I don't think you guys realize the volume of stuff that we make board members read. While it may be digital, it would equate to banker boxes full of stuff that they are having to read and prep. And that's just for the board meetings and the council meetings. And then you throw all this investigatory and enforcement stuff on top of it. You're talking about a very significant portion of your professional life that you are dedicating to the state of Texas for free. And Lord knows it's not for glory. So I worry about that part of it just kind of wearing y'all down to a nub.
Certainly for glory. Certainly for glory.
So glorious.
Okay, well, I'll let you say that.
All right. Thank you for the update. I bet we have a little bit more discussion later on.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at on the enforcement update. Is we have pulled some levers. I don't know what else to do. And I've said this before. Every time I say it, we usually come up with some other idea. The board member review was an idea, but I am now kind of out of ideas about how to tackle the increasing number of complaints. But what we are doing does seem to be winnowing down the number of pending complaints we have. What I'm just telling everybody is that is not a permanent solution, and we need to be looking towards a permanent solution in the LAR. Any questions on that? Okay,
Yes, sir.
hearing.
What is the targeted goal then for, like, is it, to add a few more investigators or to add a few more staff attorneys, or like, what is the actual goal? What do you see being, what would significantly help?
Yeah, I think we are asking for, if I'm remembering right, in the LAR, it's going to be 4 staff attorneys, one being a senior litigation attorney, somebody that can kind of supervise litigation and be the litigation mentor, because right now Patrick is having to serve in that function as well as the general counsel function. And then 4 professional reviewers, one from each of the professions, to review complaints as they come in to make a determination whether or not there's a standard of care violation there. In other words, be the gatekeeper for that type of stuff. So that's what we're looking for is 8 additional FTEs there. And we would, the professional reviewer, the clinical reviewers, we would actually be hiring licensees. So we'd be hiring a psychologist, we'd be hiring a professional counselor, an MFT, and a social worker to do that type of work. They would be on staff with BHEC, not just contracted.
And we can clearly show that, the amount of licensees has increased in Texas. And as the population's increasing, and we can clearly show that, I would think, and hopefully, fight for the cause.
You're flirting with 98,000 licensees under regulation right now. You're well over 97,000. LPCs and social workers, you're over, I think LPCs, you're well over 42,000 licenses under regulation right now. Social workers, I think you're right at 40,000, somewhere right in there. It's just, the growth rate is pretty significant in those 2 professions.
That would make us the largest mental health workforce in the country.
Yeah, probably so. Maybe just shy of California and some other.
No, I think we're bigger than them now.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Daryl, I had a quick question. Just looking at, there was some conversation about SOA, and I noticed there was a dip and then a pop. Is that also a function of just the increased number of complaints due to the increased number of licenses, or was that something specific that drove that pop for free?
The more cases that go to SOA, the more cases you're going to have that remain pending on the docket because it takes so long to get something through SOA. And my take as the ED, just from watching this stuff from the outside in, it seems like we have more cases going to SOA than what we have ever had in the past. That there are more people opting for a hearing. They're arguing and fighting us now. They may not eventually go to SOA. It may just be kind of a negotiating ploy, but it feels like we have more cases being filed at SOA than what we have in the past. And anytime something goes to SOA, it's going to be about 6 months before you're going to get a hearing date on it. From the time you file it to the time it's set for a final hearing over there, you're looking at about a 6-month lag. Just because it has nothing to do with us, it has to do with SOA's docket load. So we're kind of you then become subject to their timelines and their demands once it shifts over there, which can. Meanwhile, while those cases sitting over there, stuff is stacking up behind it, and that's how you get these really large complaint case, pending complaint caseloads. So that's why it's kind of important to keep an eye on the number of cases that are at SOA. You want to try to take. That's one of the reasons we also want to do the clinical reviewers, and while we're using the board members, the faster we can get things off of that track that's headed to SOA and kind of get them negotiated or resolved, whether it's through a dismissal or through an agreed order, the better off it is, because if it ends up at SOA, it just sits there for a while.
Is SOA understaffed? Don't they have an interest in not receiving more matters from us?
They do, but they will base their LAR request upon the internal estimates they do based on caseloads coming from coming from agencies. So in other words, some agencies have to pay SOA on like a per case basis for what they hear. We are not that way. We used to be, but we got rolled into SOA's general appropriations funding. Now SOA just makes an estimate based upon what kind of the number of cases they will receive from us, and then they aggregate that with an estimate from the number of cases they'll hear from all the other agencies in Texas, and they'll present an LAR request to the legislature for funding to hire judges and staff based upon that. They handle all that themselves. We don't really have. The only thing I do is kind of give them an estimate on the number of cases I think you're going to get from us, and then they take that and compare it against their own internal estimate, and then make their LAR request based on that.
Got it.
Go ahead, tell them that.
Well, one of the reasons too for the increase in the numbers you're seeing in the materials is we also spoke with SOA and created a default docket, and so we are able to resolve more cases through potentially using a default docket. We would normally have to do the traditional method of preparing the entire hearing and have the person not show up, and so we spoke with them about having more of an expedited default docket, and so we had about 6 or 7 cases get filed through that, and so that's another, I think, probably one of the reasons why you see the spike in those numbers as well. And so those are working their way. They'll probably be at the next BHEC meeting. You'll see those, but they're not done yet, so they're not ready for your review.
The default docket is yet another lever that we have tried to pull to help things along. The way we were doing it, even though you knew somebody wasn't going to show up, you'd file the case over at SOA, you'd go through all the rigmarole, get your witnesses lined up, get all your evidence lined up. You go over there. Of course, they don't show up, just like you knew they wouldn't. You've wasted all that time and effort, and you knew they weren't going to show up, but we have to go through that process. So what we did is we worked out a deal with SOA where we just said, look, we'd like to put all these cases where we don't think anybody's going to show up on one day. If they do show up, you just reset it to a different day. We'll gather all our evidence and we'll go do it the hard way then. But if they don't show up, then we just default them and it comes back. It should be a much quicker way to dispose of things at SOA. What you're seeing now is kind of the first fruits of that lever being pulled. We're seeing, a larger number of cases being sent over there for dismissal on the default docket. But that also increases SOA's workload because that's more cases being filed over there. So there's nothing simple or easy about this. No simple solutions is what I'm trying to say. All right. Any question? Yeah.
Has there been any effort to curb the number? Can you hear me now? Okay. Has there been any effort to curb the number of complaints coming in through technology, whether it's automated triage, whether it's education? I know I used to manage a help desk, and so one of the things we did was analyze the complaints coming in and figure out whether we could curb that through education, through other triage, to manage the whole process better. Has there been any effort into that?
Yeah, unfortunately, complaints don't work like kind of FAQs. That you would be able to do that with, where you could recognize kind of a pattern and you would have a targeted audience that you could educate on. Because complaints are coming from members of the public who utilize these services, we're never going to know who that is, and there's no way we can target users of mental and behavioral health services to where we can really educate them the same way we can like applicants or licensees who use our systems and then create FAQs targeting them. Now, I will say, now that you mentioned this, one thing we are working on, and this is in the very early, this is very, very early, and this is just us kind of spitballing, but McGregor has been working with a couple of our investigators to develop an AI system that when complaints come in order to shorten the review time, because it's like I said, some of these complaints will range 800-900 pages. And trying to review all of that, that's a solid week's worth of
8 to 900?
8 to 900
Like what
pages.
kind of stuff is that?
All your mental health records. They'll submit everything. Yeah, and of course, if it's a custody case or any kind of
Yeah.
court, you get
Court
all
case
the court filings.
Mhm.
And so that's a lot of reading. I mean, that's a solid week's worth of reading to sit there and go through and have to notate. So one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to see, is there a way that we can develop an AI system that is closed loop? It's not training off of our stuff, and it's not free in the wild. It's just a corralled system where we could put this stuff in, and the AI system would kind of generate a preliminary investigation report and go, these are the possible issues that we see here. Now you need to have a warm body actually go look at it and see whether or not this is right. We are not talking about taking investigators or staff attorneys out of the loop at all. I'll just tell you right now, the legislature's never going to be cool with that, and I don't imagine y'all would be either. So that's not anything we're looking at doing. But we've got to figure out some way to kind of sift through these high volume complaints that we get quickly, so that we can kind of winnow it down and target our efforts.
I'm going to talk to there's another board member on a different board who actually, as a function of his work, has one of those like sandbox systems. I for the size of their business, I'm sure it's not cheap for what they use, but I know that exists. It would be worth looking into that to see what's out there off the shelf.
Well, McGregor and a couple of our investigators have already got something built. And one of the things that we are doing is in our LAR, you're going to see a request for some additional, it's basically licensure upgrades for our Office 365 suite that would then give us the sandbox program within Microsoft Copilot, because that's what it's built in. But we got to get the money to do that before we can actually deploy it. And plus, McGregor has already been working with DIR to get their blessing on it, because anything we do has got to be blessed by DIR in this, because it's the state is real sensitive about AI, how you use AI. They're not going to let you just use it for anything.
What we're talking about here, though, is essentially when you get 900 pages, this is kind of what AI is, but I think really great at, is reading, summarizing key things, and compartmentalizing like information, and bringing it back in a readable format to where somebody can triage it and then go, oh, I need to read page 534 for whatever that nugget was.
And so that we're working on that, but we've still got a long ways to go on that, and that's going to take legislative blessing before we can ever actually deploy something like that. But that is in the works.
Can we name it HAL?
What is that? Is that an acronym?
No.
Okay, we need it. Oh, okay.
I was going to say also, I mean, wouldn't that be extremely helpful just for applications? Just in general, like for all the different, the applications that come in.
Yes, that's McGregor. I give McGregor. He gives me a lot of grief over being from the country, and he's a city boy. But he has actually, he can't see me right now. He has actually had a lot of pretty good ideas for a 12-year-old. He's got a lot of good ideas, and so yeah, he's actually looked at it for the application side as well. But candidly, it's like one problem at a time, guys. I got, let's tackle one big problem at a time right now. The enforcement is the one that's screaming. So let's deal with it. And then if we can adapt this thing later on for use in the application side, great. But we'd also have to figure out how to tie it in probably to the database system, which that's a whole other set of problems. And we're not there yet. But it does have potential for that. All right.
Like John said, though, that's what it's good. I mean, that's what AI is good for, is, cruising through large volumes of documents and scanning and pinpointing, highlighting things like that. So, I mean, it seems like, especially on a closed loop, if you can get it, HIPAA safe and everything like that, then I think you're, thinking in the right direction.
The scariest thing for me about AI is that when you let it reason, it's often wrong, but not at all in doubt. And but in terms of information, it's awesome.
All right. So, I don't really have much else under the informational items. The last two things I would point out is just the results of our survey of employee engagement. There were two aspects of that. The employee dissatisfaction with pay and benefits and employee development were our biggest problems that were identified. You'll see the pay issue is reflected in one of our LAR requests. So that's the only reason I bring that up here now. And then, of course, we've got our customer service report from 2025, which we did very well. I mean, we had a good report on customer service. So the biggest gripes continue to be the website. We get people that say it's great. They'd like to, bronze their baby shoes for it. And then other people would rather tar and feather us over it. So we get the full spectrum of kudos and complaints about the website. But
I mean, I have to interface with government too. I mean, government websites never get my accolades. So if we have any accolades for it, I'll take that.
We do. We have some accolades. The last thing under informational that I would point out is on LPCs. You guys have launched a Spanish language exam that we have now signed on, and we can now accept the Spanish language exam through NCC. So I signed that agreement just the other day. That's pretty much it for the informational items, Mr. Chair.
I'm going to put you on the spot about the Supreme Court case. For the edification of all of us on the board or the council and boards, and then for the public, can you just, I know this is difficult to do, can you put in 30 seconds from an agency perspective of how this changed the landscape, how if there's kind of almost something for everyone not to like about it in some ways, can you put that as tightly as you can for the edification of everybody out there?
Sure.
In a way that I can understand it, Daryl.
I don't know if I can do that, but I'll do my best.
The dumb real estate broker up here can understand it.
So the basic gist of Childs versus Salazar is the government can no longer engage in viewpoint discrimination in the confidential setting of talk therapy, counseling, psychotherapy, whatever you call it, whatever the profession is. We no longer get to engage in viewpoint discrimination. The case arose out of conversion therapy out of California. Kaylee Childs, Christian counselor, wanted to do the talk therapy version of, I don't even say conversion therapy, but she just wanted to engage in talk therapy with folks that were struggling with gender identity, sexual orientation, that kind of thing. California law prevented her, or Colorado law prevented her from doing anything other than affirming what the patient or client reported. She did not believe that was necessarily the best approach. And she sued the state of Colorado over that and prevailed, because what Colorado was saying was you can only speak in this manner in a therapeutic setting. You can only affirm, which is just talk. You're not laying hands on anybody. You're not doing electroshock therapy or anything like that. And the U.S. Supreme Court said, thou shalt not do that, Colorado or any other state, which means we cannot, BHEC, the social work board, the LPC board, the psychology board, the MFT board, we cannot engage in any kind of viewpoint discrimination, which is particularly salient for, especially in a profession that your method of providing treatment and care is through speech, which is it's a watershed moment, particularly because your standards of care are based around what is the prevailing viewpoint, or what is the prevailing speech that should be used in a therapeutic setting. Now the Supreme Court has said, state, you don't get to determine or engage in viewpoint discrimination and say what is the dominant and what is the unacceptable treatment or speech in that setting any longer. How that's all going to play out over time, I don't know, but that's it in a nutshell. Is we are no longer going to be telling you what you can and cannot say in the counseling room or in your office setting. So
the only thing, I appreciate that. The thing I would add for members of the public out there is that I hate making all these rule changes and whatnot, because I believe when you don't know the rules and the rules are so ever changing, it's hard to practice. And so there is, from my perspective, I am always dragging the brakes on why are we doing this? Is this regulatorily necessary? This puts even further brakes on what we can and can't do, and actually probably limits the steering left and right of what we can and can't do. So to everybody out there, I mean, I feel like a lot of times over my tenure here, we've been a place where people want to have policy debates. This really isn't the place for it, because a lot of these policy debates are happening in the ledge and now in the courts, and we're on the end of the whip trying to figure out what that means where the rubber hits the road for everybody. So in a lot of ways, I feel like the profession and the board here and the council and boards are all a little bit in the same boat trying to figure it out. So
now I will add, I hope people, what they did not hear is, well, now we can sleep with patients. We can, no, that's not speech. What you bill, if you charge usurious interest, that's not speech. So all the requirements that the boards, that your rule books have about getting informed consent, we may not, that kind of stuff, that's all still fine. We're just not going to tell you that, well, you can't practice CBT, or you can't do this kind of conversion therapy, or you can't do gender affirming care. That kind of stuff we're out of the business of. If gender affirming care is your counseling, if that's your thing, then I think that's going to be protected under the First Amendment. If that is not your thing, and you take the Christian counselor bent view on it, then that is protected as well. But no sleeping with the patients, no cheating insurance. Those are the two big things. We're still going to get you for that. So don't think that this is just licensed to run amok out in the world, because it is not.
I think Daryl, you highlight right there the things that there's something for everybody to be unhappy with.
Yeah.
With this one. So, okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. Moving on. Are we done with informational items?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're moving on to Section 5, action items. These may require discussion and or action. So we'll start with 5A. We've got some disciplinary recommendations. I think there are 2.
There are. Do you want me to give you a brief?
Yes, run us down on those, and if they're in, I think I'm going to maybe speaking out of turn here. One of them may have not shown up previously, so
both of them did not show up.
Okay.
So, but we should still see if they're in attendance and give them an opportunity to speak if they
Take it
are
away.
available. So the first one is Cheyenne Kolyanik, and that was a default from SOA. The respondent had a dual relationship with a client. It turned into a friendship that developed into a sexual relationship within weeks of terminating professional services. She failed to cooperate with the council's investigation. This was filed at SOA. She failed to appear at the SOA hearing. We asked for default. SOA has remanded it back to the board, and then which recommended a final order for the council's consideration, which is revocation of her license. I guess we should see if she's in attendance.
If Cheyenne Kolhanek or attorney is in the audience, please use the raise your hand function if you want to address the council. Do you have anybody?
See no hands.
Seeing none. Okay, let's just leave that for a second. Maybe we can take them together.
Move on to the next one.
Yeah, move on to the next one.
John McDonald is the other case. The respondent in that case had health issues that affected his ability to provide professional services, and he continued to provide services while having these health issues. And he practiced on a delinquent license, and he failed to cooperate with the council's investigation. That case, again, was set at SOA. He failed to appear. The SOA judge granted our default request, remanded it back to the agency. Both of these are LPC cases. The LPC board reviewed this. There's an order in your packet recommending the revocation of his license. I do want to interject, though, for the Cheyenne Kolyanik case. Dr. Taylor, you were on the ISC, so you should recuse for that one. But the other board member for the John McDonald case was only at the LPC board, is not a council member, so we don't need to recuse for that one.
Okay. So we would have before the council ratification of these final orders as a motion?
Yes, we should see if John McDonald is in attendance as well,
Yep.
just to give him an opportunity to speak.
Okay, so if Mr. McDonald and or his attorney is present, please use the raise your hand function.
I see no hands.
Seeing none. Okay. Dr. Taylor, unless you want to vote on both of these and separate them, we could.
I'll just recuse from
Okay,
both.
just recusing. Okay. Is there a motion to accept both of these final orders?
So moved.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second? Is there any further?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, this is of accepting those final orders for ratification and revocation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Thank you. All right, moving on to 5B, update on the implementation for SB1 budget rider regarding development Spanish language exam for social work.
Robert, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but basically where we're at now is we have been working with ASWB and NASW Texas to try to figure out how to be able to utilize the $200,000 that was appropriated to BHEC to develop and deploy a Spanish language version of the LMSW exam. We have not been successful in being able to do that as of yet, so I feel like probably the money, we've already got it slated to lapse back into GR because I don't think we're going to be able to achieve what the legislature wanted us to achieve this biennium. But ASWB and NASW are working to survey both social workers in Texas and across the country to develop to determine an appetite for a Spanish language exam. And ASWB is in the process of developing a French language exam. So they will have a good idea of what it's going to cost to develop a Spanish language exam based upon the French language exam development. And then we'll hopefully be able to have, a better figure to take back to the legislature and say, look, if you want to do this, here's what it's going to cost to do it. Robert, did I get anything wrong there?
Yep, nope, that's right. And the only thing I'd add is ASWB recognizes that they'll have some ownership and level in this, and I don't think they're expecting Texas to foot the entire bill.
That's all we've got on that, Mr. Chair.
Good deal. All right, 5C, that's the evaluation of the executive director's job performance. I'm gonna table that, and then we'll come back to that at the end of the meeting. So that brings us to the review and approval of the strategic plan. Anything I want to say about that? I reviewed it, autographed it. It's been submitted.
Yeah, we had to submit the strategic plan on June 1st was the deadline. However, that being said, you got it there. If any of you feel strongly that you want to make changes to it or you wanted to add something to it, we can always amend that plan. So we need you to let us know if you want to do something.
I don't think any action is necessarily.
Otherwise, no action is necessary.
So any questions or hot revisions that we want to make to it? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to E, review and approve exceptional items. Is that part of that as well? Have we already submitted our LAR?
No, we have not.
Okay.
So one of the things we wanted to do was to bring before this body the exceptional items or the amounts we are requesting over and above what's called our baseline budget. In other words, the baseline budget is what it takes us to operate like right now, here and now. So we'll ask for the baseline budget again to keep regular operations going. But in order to achieve things above and beyond our daily operations right now, we have to ask for what's called exceptional items. We've got 5 listed here. The first, and they're ranked in priority status. The first being the additional staff that we've talked about already to address the growing enforcement needs, and that's going to. You can see in the details in that tab too. We've got 3 staff attorneys, 1 senior litigation attorney, and 4 clinical review specialists. So there's that total. Then we've got staff salary increases based upon the staff salary survey of employee engagement that we did. It's just working for the state. You are never going to. The state is just not competitive with a lot of the folks around here. So I feel like we need to ask for additional funding for staff salary increases. Now, I will say the increases we're asking for are not for management or executive level staff. They are for our line staff. our investigators, our licensing and permit specialists, the folks who are actually, they are the economic engines of the agency. They are the folks that process your applications, get your renewals done, and then handle all the complaints. So those are the folks that we are asking for the funding for. The third being the psychology exam. I will tell you the amount we have listed here is just a placeholder. We won't actually know the full amount until we publish the RFP, the request for proposal, which y'all are going to look at and review and approve later on in the agenda. But once we get that back, we'll actually substitute whatever that amount is for the amount you see here. So I suspect it'll be more than $1 million, but this is a placeholder nonetheless, just to give you, it's a rough estimate. And then the last two items are additional NPDB costs. Right now we are required to subscribe to the National Practitioner Data Bank to get, it's a rolling update on all licensees. In case you get in trouble in a different jurisdiction, we get notified of that. Administrative trouble, not criminal trouble. And then lastly, number 5 is the upgrade to our Office 365 license to allow us to do the AI type stuff that we talked about earlier. So those are the 5 exceptional items we are requesting that I'm asking the council to approve.
Very good. I remember something that Dr. Cartwright said one time. I thought it was actually a really great question. He said, "Can we go ask the legislature like if they want what they think about this?" And they communicate with us what they think about certain things by what they decide to write checks for. And so here we are. So I always appreciated that question. So is there any further discussion or questions about this?
That's one question for you, Daryl. So when you come up with the salary for the different positions, how do you come up with that number? I know obviously like state government isn't going to pay in the private sector, salaries are going to be a lot higher. We've discussed that before in previous meetings, but how do you come up with that number? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. That's a good question. No, I actually, for like the staff salary increases, what I do is I look at the SAO job classification schedules for that particular job position, and then I look at the midpoint for that salary, and then I also pull I use what's called an E-class system, which is another tool through the state auditor's office, and I look at all the LNP positions, investigate any kind of position we have. I look at that same position across all Article 8 agencies in the state of Texas, and then I look to see what is the midpoint, the midpoint salary for that position across the state, and I see how far we are off, and we're typically off by quite a bit. We typically pay less than what the midpoint salary is, either in the SAO's job classification scheme or in the actual salaries paid by other agencies. And so what I'm trying to do here is close the gap by that request for additional staff salary money. And then when I'm trying to set the salaries on like the new FTEs, if that's what you're asking about, I do the same thing. I just look to see, well, what is the actual, what am I going to have to do to compete with other agencies or the private sector? And I'll never really be able to compete with the private sector, but how do I get close, at least in the ballpark? So that's how I do it. There are just tools that the SAO gives us that I use.
Great. Yep. That answers my question.
Cool. Any other comments or questions? All right. Hearing none, we need to go ahead and move to approve this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I need a motion to approve this LAR.
So move.
All right. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor of approving our LAR, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
I say no.
The ayes have it. Thank you. All right, moving on to review and approve the RFP for the development of and administration of a Texas-owned psychology licensure exam. So this is actually, we started with with the first round was figuring out what the plans, the architectural drawings of what this building might look like. And now we're saying, do we want to go build the building?
Yep. Now you're getting an estimate on what it's going to cost to build it.
And then we go ask the legislature for the funding to do it.
Correct.
All right. What do we need to talk about in terms of the RFP?
I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Romig. This is in his operation.
Let's hear it, Mr. Romig.
Absolutely. So in your packets, you'll have seen some of the historical documents through this project. And those are really offered just so you can see what we've done to vet this project and really develop it over time. We did a national survey. We've gotten a lot of responses about what people are interested in a new exam. We also then, I'm proud of the group of professionals and professors that signed on board to be a part of our stakeholder groups and really vet and think about, if we were creating this exam, what does it need to look like? And the fruits of that labor is in your packet. That then worked into the scope of work document that the psychology board voted on at their last meeting. That scope of work defines what the exam is going to look like and is the meat of this RFP that you have in front of you. The RFP process, you'll see the schedule that we've outlined, that this RFP would be published at the end of this month. We'll get questions, we'll get submissions, we might get some presentations, and then bring essentially back to you at your October meeting a vote to select a vendor at that point, and then we would have the cost estimate to take to the legislature. The one thing I would point out about this process and creating the exam, people may ask, well, why is it so expensive to create an exam? The actual cost in the contract for the vendor that is doing it will be a significantly less, a smaller portion of that $1 million that we expect. The two things that contribute mostly to the cost is that you have to have a lot of people contribute to writing the exam questions. And they're not only exam writers, but then you have to have committees that look for bias and look for ways in which students would misunderstand or misread the questions. You have to get those people in a room together so they can debate. So there's lots of stakeholder item writing costs and travel costs to do that. In addition, the process that we use, one of the things that was identified is, if we were going to do this, we want to really have a robust validation process where once we have the exam developed, we make sure it is a really solid exam that actually tests the things that we want to test. And so the board scope of work anticipates a larger validation process in the end, more beta testing. And that requires lots of test takers to try taking the test at a reduced or no cost. And so that costs a lot. And so those are the two big features that are going to increase the cost of the exam. I just wanted to point that out. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward RFP. It's just like every other contract process you'll ever go through in the state, just being an unusual one. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I just wanted to say, before we go further on this, I just wanted to, on the record, express my appreciation to Robert in particular, but all the staff and all the respondents and everybody that's been involved with this. This has been a massive lift to get to this point, and just wanted on the record that Robert has done an outstanding job. Staff has done an outstanding job. So thank y'all for all the hard work on this.
Hear, hear. Yeah,
and also to the members of the various advisory groups, it was really helpful. We had such great insight on different aspects of this exam and the development and the challenges that there are going to be. And this is going to be a multi deadline period of time. And this isn't something that's just going to be like, in 6 months it's ready to go. I mean, it's going to take time and it's going to take development, and so it's going to take a lot of patience as well. But just special thanks to everybody out there that has given their feedback and their insight, and also people that took the survey just to give us some perspective from the public. It's been very, very helpful. So just want to say thank you to everyone for that.
Yeah, I also have a couple people to thank and note. Every single state stakeholder across the nation, from coast to coast, and from the Canadian border to the southern border, to those who have invited us to come talk to them in their meetings in an open forum, and to those who have talked to us behind the scenes and off the record. And I could name everybody off, but I don't want to put targets on people necessarily, because this is the first time in half a century where somebody has really embarked to set off on having a new exam. So thank you to everybody who's engaged in these conversations. There's still a lot that's going to have to be done, and we want to keep having those conversations. So, and to Robert, amazing job getting us this far. Any other questions, comments?
Chair Hallbauer has his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair Hallbauer.
How are we looking on as far as target implementation deadlines? Like how far out are we looking?
So it will partly depend on the proposals we receive and their estimated time. I would imagine we can't really start until next September. And a robust timeline would be 2 years from that date. And so having an exam able to be published in September of 2029 would be about the earliest that is possible. Given the amount of validation that we want to do, probably fall of 2030 is more likely. But it sort of depends on how quickly the vendor can gather things going, and all of the design elements and work we've done up front should mean that we can short circuit some of the initial process that a vendor would take. They would normally want to sit down with us and talk through, well, what kind of exam do you want? What do you want it to look like? And we already have that and can present it to them and say, go, start building this. So that should cut it down a little bit.
So how big of a gap will there be between when the new EPPP exam requirements are mandatory and when, under the robust timeline, we would be able to have this alternative?
Around 3 years. Next, the new EPPP will be ready next fall when we would be starting our process, and so they will be implementing the integrated EPPP sometime mid next fall.
Okay, so about 3 years, ideally.
Ideally, if all goes to plan.
Okay.
The other thing I would mention just as part of this RFP, because you might just be interested, in addition to creating the exam and then administering the exam, the other component of the project is going to be the project management and staffing on our end. And that we have built into our LAR request the ability to request staff on hand, so that we have full-time staff that we hire that are state employees that manage this exam project and program. But we still have the flexibility to decide whether we want to go with that model, or depending on what our vendor proposals get, we could go with a contract model where we don't have any staff on hand. We instead contract for that program management. And we'll bring pros and cons to you based on the vendor proposals.
Okay.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, so before us is to approve the RFP for posting. Any motions?
I move to approve the RFP.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 So the chair voting aye. All those opposed say no. Oh, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Moving on to G. We're going to talk about, I think,
the renewal process.
Are you going to take this, Dr. Taylor?
Sure.
All right.
So I do two. I'll be quick on this. I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I do two things on my birthday every year, Daryl. I sit down and I go to the Secretary of State and I check for unclaimed property, see if there's anything out there that might be, great for my birthday, right? It's a nice little birthday present. And then I go to see if I need to renew my license. And every other year I have to do it, and I have to go through this process. And this year it was the worst it's ever been. To the point to where I texted you and said, how necessary is it for me to have a license? So I recognize that there might not be anything we can do about this, but, you know, Einstein said it best, the speed of light slows as it approaches state government. So I know this is going to be frustrating.
Did Einstein actually say that?
No, he didn't say that. So I had to go through 4 different portals to pay, to take the JP exam, then the sex trafficking course, which was through a different one, and then come back and then go to the CE broker and then upload everything in CE broker so that I could then go back into the portal for it to tell me that I didn't pay, even though I did pay. And then I had to go back and figure out why I didn't pay and then go back into it. And then finally it said, hey, congratulations. It took 4 hours. I want those 4 hours back. I'm done.
I was missing part of my derriere that day after after all of this.
So but my big point on this is that there's too many functions in this for us during renewal. And I think this is going to cause a problem for staff moving forward as more and more people have questions on, hey, I can't get into this. Hey, where do I do this? If there's any effort that we can make to simplifying this process, I'm not necessarily saying removing things out of it, but just making it to where we have fewer portals, just a one-stop shop. I don't know.
No, I hear you. I don't have a good answer for the fragmentation of it. I really don't. It's a product of the database does this. It can only do certain things. The JP exam is a registration through a different system, CE broker, different login. There may be something we could do there through single identity login, kind of a single login. We might be able to do something there, but I hear you. We'll definitely take a look and see what we can do.
That'll be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right. Moving on to, we've got 2 AI line items. We need an AI code of ethics and minimum standards for heightened scrutiny for AI systems. Can we take those together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we just need to ratify these?
Just ratify.
Is there any?
I just need some policies on the books.
Okay. So y'all have seen the policies in your packet. Is there any questions or discussion? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve them. All right. It's been moved by Mr. Hampton. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you. All right. We could go into go into executive session to discuss pending litigation, but it's not pending anymore. Is that correct? That's
for the most part. It's the case has been dismissed.
Okay.
The 15th Court of Appeals ruled in our favor and dismissed.
Sorry, in which case is this for the edification of the public?
This is the Yonnecut lawsuit where the Social Work Board and BHEC were sued by 2 prospective social workers who were denied licensure based on disqualifying criminal history under Chapter 108 of the Occupations Code.
So I think it's just noteworthy for everybody here to understand. Sometimes people have an axe to grind with the council, so they sue the council, and sometimes people have an axe to grind with the law, which we enforce and carry out by function. The legislature said, thou shalt do this. We say, okay. But we're the vehicle in which somebody would sue us to take issue with the law.
Correct.
And that was the issue here.
Exactly.
So it wasn't because we were being bad or anything else. It was because we
were following the law.
We were following the law, and they had issue with the law. So, all right.
It's worth noting, though, that while the 15th Court of Appeals did dismiss the case against us, the AG does anticipate that the plaintiffs would appeal that potentially to the Texas Supreme Court. So I haven't been given any notice of that appeal yet, but if they do, then you will see this again on the agenda. So it may not necessarily go away. It may not necessarily be done.
Okay.
But and we'll just update you on that appeal if it happens.
Cool. Very good. We've got enough of we've got enough here. Everyone's kept their cameras on online, which is keeping us with a quorum, we would need 2 of y'all online, always with your cameras on, to maintain quorum. I'm going to just keep pressing on. If anyone needs a break, I say go for it. Without objection, we're just going to keep going. Is that good? Mm-hmm. Unless anybody want to take a break for a minute. All right, hearing none, we're going to go into rulemaking. We've got 6A. We've got proposed rule changes for BHEC. Somebody, Daryl, who's going to lay these
Robert,
out?
you want to lay out 6A?
Sure. Happy to.
All right. Do it.
All right. So we've got 4 rule proposals for you on the BHEC rules. Item 1, 882.6, the limitation on number of exam attempts. State law requires us to have a limitation on the number of exam attempts, but it doesn't say anything more than that. And what we've previously done is say after 3 exam attempts, you need to come before the relevant board with a study plan. We have not found through experience that these study plans actually perform a public benefit. It's really a bureaucratic hurdle for folks, and the boards have agreed that we've brought to them that we really don't have any way of knowing if it's serving any purpose or help, and it's just making everybody take longer to get to take their test again. And so this rule change would remove those study plans and instead set the limitation on the number of exam attempts at the same level as the exam administrator. So if the EPPP or the NCE all of them have a cadence of you may only take the exam twice a year or 3 times a year or whatever it is. And so we will just be mirroring whatever that limitation is and getting rid of the study plans. Item 2, and please stop me if you have any questions about any of these. Item 2, 882.36, is just a refresh of the compliance with state and federal law. It's adding some requirements that the last legislative session updated, and just going ahead and adding some other state laws. Obviously, it's a tautology that our licensees have to follow state and federal law. We don't really have to have a rule saying that. But our licensees have expressed that they find this rule very helpful to point them to the different codes and laws that they need to be thinking about. And so that's what we're doing here, is just adding a few that we want to make sure to highlight that licensees know about. Item 3, 884.13, procedures regarding complaints filed against council or board members. This is just setting down a standard procedure over the last 5 years, 6 years now, creation of BHEC. There have been occasions where a board member or a council member has had a complaint filed against them. Obviously, that creates a bit of an awkward situation where the staff still need direction on how to handle those complaints, and the boards need to be able to rule on those complaints in an objective way without that board member participating. So this just sets down a standard process. It's what we would use and have used in the past, but we wanted to write it down so that it's just clear we're not making things up as we're going along. And then lastly, 884.31 is an update to the notice rule. And this is adding language that was required by the legislature and just conforming that. And then also just putting it better into plain language and making it a little easier to read for folks. And so that's just the notice people have to give to their to the public when they're providing services.
So a quick question on the notice 884.31. We have a couple of different original, revised.
We're asking you to propose the revised version.
And what was the difference with those two?
The original version had the notice that's set out in the attached graphic was also set out in the body of the rule in the original version. That is duplicative, and so I know Treo is going to look at that. The Texas Regulatory Efficiency Office, they'll look at that whenever they review it and go, why are you saying the same thing twice? And because it takes up a lot of space when you do that, a lot of extra words. We're just saying drop it out of the body, leave it in the attached graphic, that way licensees can just print the attached graphic off and slap it up on the wall and be in compliance.
Cool.
That's what we're asking.
All right, thank you for the explanation there. So on 1, 2, and 4, there's no real options or anything on that. That's a pretty much up or down, propose or not, unless
Correct.
somebody wants to start making amendments to it here in the meeting. But on 884.13, we have some options there. There's
sir.
3 different sections. So I would recommend to council members, make sure you have that up here, 884.13. And we have in section G, there are 3 section 1s. Are there any other things that we need to?
F2 is
an option.
Is optional.
In or out.
Do you want to include it or not?
Okay. Is there any questions about this before we get started? So I want to point out one thing in terms of how board members and council members are essentially hired and fired. So the governor does the hiring and firing. The hiring, really. The Senate would actually technically do potentially the firing of council or board members. We're all appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate in our board roles. But in our council role, we are voted on. So essentially, there's a little bit more prerogative that the boards have and the council has over its membership. Same way, thinking about this, it's a little bit like Congress, where people send somebody to Congress, and it's Congress that sets its committees and membership. So I feel like most of these options here are different flavors of that same sort of ethos, and the ability that we, I think, as a council, need to police ourselves and hold, ourselves to a higher standard. So
I will say, Mr. Chair, what from my perspective as the executive director, I would recommend that the council do adopt F2 and then the 3rd iteration of 1 under G.
Will you tell us the differences in your reasoning there? I don't disagree with you.
Well, F2 is just it's just something that I feel like it's probably a reasonable thing to request that.
Hang on a second. For the edification of everybody listening, essentially what this section is saying is that upon notice of the complaint, the respondent with the board member, council member must recuse service from committee, temporary suspension panel, disciplinary review panel, or from serving as a delegate to an agency or work group while that complaint is pending. So that sort of jives with the idea of like a police officer who's accused of wrongdoing goes on administrative leave until we figure out what happened.
Correct. We don't want, while it may turn out to be innocent or the complaint may end up being dismissed, on the off chance that there is a finding of a violation there, we don't want the entire process that they have touched in the meantime to be tainted. So it's just not worth the risk there for transparency and kind of the optics and the amount of trust that the public places in us. It needs to be clean and above board.
Yeah.
And then on G, I'm recommending the 3rd iteration because it captures both the I think the council, if a board member ends up being disciplined, I think the council needs to be able to pull that individual from any kind of committee or representative function where they are representing the board or the council. Say you're a delegate to ASPPB, we need to be able to say, no, you can no longer serve as a representative of the agency in that deliberative body because you would have a vote. You would be representing the agency. So I think it's fair to say we don't want you representing the agency if you've been disciplined by the council. I also think it's fair to say that individual can be pulled from ISC panels, temporary suspension panels, if they have been disciplined for misconduct. And then the 3rd iteration also gives the council the ability to, they can be removed from their role on the council. They cannot be removed as a board member. But you can be stripped of your role on the council. And then the 3rd iteration makes it clear that if you are removed from one of these roles, you cannot be reappointed to that. Now, I want to make clear, I hope what people are hearing or what people are not thinking is, well, the council is just taking control there and kind of telling the boards what to do. Remember how these orders would come to the council. They're going to have to come through the member boards. So the member boards are going to have to recommend the same thing. It's not just going to be the council saying, we want you off that committee. It's going to be that board saying, we don't think they should be on that committee and we don't think they should be on the council. And then the council is going to say, we agree. And then entering the disciplinary order and stripping them of those privileges, because it is a privilege, not a right, to serve in those capacities. So that's why I'm recommending the third iteration. However, the other two, would allow a member board to reappoint somebody to a position from which they had been stripped or removed. So it really depends on what you guys feel is appropriate there.
I think I've borrowed, in terms of how we run things around here, I've borrowed from, I think, the best parts of our institutions. Like even when, we have our contentious debates, borrowing from the Supreme Court that everybody speaks once before anyone speaks twice. This seems very similar to in Congress, how when somebody's been bad and they're not necessarily going to expel a member, they can remove them from all committee assignments, and the only thing they get is their vote on the floor. They're one of 435. This essentially would do the same thing. This would give you your vote if you were in trouble. This would give you your vote at your Senate confirmed role, but nothing more.
Correct.
Ryan, Chair Bridges.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a quick question, maybe for Daryl. I like the language in option 3, but I did want to ask, I noticed in options 1 and 2, something that is probably implied anyways, but I thought it was probably good that it was spelled out, was that council chair may not be removed under this provision. But I noticed that was left out of option 3. Is there a reason?
Yeah, it's one of those self-evident truths. We simply cannot strip somebody of their appointed status, either as a member of the board or John is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate as the chair. There is nothing you guys can do to remove him from that position.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to clarify. I was for option 1 and 2. Like I said, it's probably implied, but I thought that inclusion was good in those, so I wasn't sure if it was because of that implication that it was just left out of option 3 because it's maybe redundant.
It's just one of those it's a self-evident truth. It's just, it cannot happen. So I just didn't feel the need to restate it. I'm trying to kind of channel Treo here in that they probably wouldn't want us just saying something that is a self-evident or that is a factual or legal impossibility.
Water is wet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I was just going to make the comment too that, I think like the protection element of it, like you want the wording that is going to protect the board itself, the most. So, and I think I kind of agree that number 3 or the part 3 does encompass that better.
I would also iterate that just because these are powers, they can be exercised or not exercised. So it is a choice that the boards and the council would have to whether or not to exercise. It's not automatic. It's not an automatic execution. So if a board member just gets a complaint about failure to comply with records production, I would say it would be a far stretch of the imagination to say you're going to get stripped of committees and pulled off the council, and for that kind of disciplinary action. It's just not. I just don't see that's not a reasonable response in my view.
Any further questions or discussion?
Does this impact our public members at all?
Kind of not really, because you can't file a complaint on me as a public member. There's nothing to I mean, you could maybe, if I wanted to pretend I'm a psychologist, you could file a complaint for, unlicensed practice.
Right.
And you could get some sort of order.
It would affect your public members. Well, no, because you can't get a complaint on them. So no, I mean, they would have to be engaging in some sort of unlicensed practice.
For unlicensed practice, is it an eligibility order to where if I ever
cease and desist?
Okay.
Yeah, it's cease and desist, and then if you fail to desist as requested, we gets kicked over to the AG's office, possibly referred for criminal prosecution.
So that's not.
Well, John, you did take the EPPP, right?
I know. I haven't hung my shingle yet, though, so you can't get me. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we should take the advice of our ED, Daryl, and that's my thought. I mean, I think that he's thought it out pretty well, and the argument makes sense. So that's just my take on it.
Okay, so is that in favor of keeping F2 and then the third option of G1?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that a motion? Is there any further discussion?
I move to keep F2 and go with G, the third option of G.
Okay, you guys have heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'd second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, so we just moved on 6A3. We still have before us 1, 2, and 4.
Correct.
Is there any discussion on those? Motion to propose those?
I so move.
It's been moved to propose by Dr. Taylor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. All right. We have nothing for adoption. Moving to... Okay, so for efficiency's sake, let me see what makes sense here. We have proposed rule changes for marriage and family therapists and counselors. We also have proposed rulemaking for the social worker examiners. This was one on the social workers. That one had implications from the Supreme Court case.
Correct. That's got some implications from the Childs versus Salazar opinion.
Okay, so if we leave, we just need to. The other boards had a chance to look at this. They didn't move anything on it. Social workers
Correct.
did. The court case came out, and probably would be wise to leave that one on the table.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's my request, is
Okay.
that we leave it.
All right, so does that make sense to everybody? Any questions about potentially leaving 10A1? This would be the proposed rules from the social workers. Nothing against that. It's just flirts. We need to probably take a different look at that based on that Supreme Court case. So if we are going to leave that on the table, we could take a motion to propose everything else in 9A and 7A. Unless anyone wants to pull anything out and discuss it or take a separate vote on it. Do we need to go through those rules, or is everybody familiar with them?
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
And Dr. Taylor, jump in on this if you want to, but I did want to, as far as the ones for the LPCs are considering, we did have that comment during public comment regarding the proposed change to the 4-hour average, and I just wanted to say that I support the proposed change to the 4 hours. I like that it gives our counselors a little more flexibility, and especially regards to like an extended illness or maternity leave. And it also makes life a lot easier for staff when evaluating an applicant for the licensure. I get where the comment was coming from, but I'm going to go on the record and say I support the proposal that we have. And Dr. Taylor, anything to add on that?
No, just that this is the proposed process. So,
Yeah.
I, for one, look forward to reading the comments as always, to see if somebody has better ideas than we do, or has a better viewpoint than we do, or just different viewpoint. So I do hope that Dr. Hollingsworth and anyone else that is invested in this rule change will submit public comment on that rule when it comes back around to the LPC board.
And that is the beauty of this process. There's a multiple bites at the apple to make these things better where needed.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the most expeditious way, if no one wants to pull anything out, would be to move to propose everything proposed in 9A and 7A. Correct?
Correct.
Right? Okay,
Yes,
I got it right.
In mass.
Yeah. Any motions?
Well, I'll move that we accept 7A and 9A in bulk.
All right. It's been moved. 7A and 9A. Any? Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to leave 10A on the table. All right, we can go around the horn for reports from member boards regarding current or future issues that may impact the profession or the agency's regulatory functions. Not everybody at once.
I'll go first. I don't have much. I think the main thing we're considering looking at is changing the way we construct committees. I think we've got too many committees based on the number of members we have out on board, so we're going through a process to figure out how to categorize the committees and then shrink down committees, particularly standing committees. We'll always have ad hoc committees, but from a standing committee standpoint, the objective is to get it down to 3.
Sorry, Mr. Hampton, are you on the LMFT board?
I am on the MFT board.
Really? You
Yes.
guys want to do less?
Yeah, I've been on other boards, and I think really for non-member board, 5 committees is just way too many to manage. I think standard practice is 4, 3 is probably ideal. So that's just kind of my thoughts at this point in time. But we've got an ad hoc committee to look at that, and we'll be making that change by the next committee meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Who else?
I'll go.
Let's hear it.
A lot of this was already addressed earlier regarding the complaint numbers, but I would like just for the public and for this council to know that LPC members are stepping up to really work towards getting our complaint numbers under control, and especially recognize Dr. Stubblefield on our board, who is really taking an exemplary volunteer position on assisting staff with the initial review and then a recommendation on the further course of action. We acknowledge that a lot of the complaint numbers are coming from LPCs, and yeah, we're a large percentage of the mental health licensees, but really the increase in complaints is outpacing the growth in the overall licensee population. We acknowledge that, and we, like I said, all the levers that have come up for as an idea, as a possible solution, I think we've adopted all of them so far, and we're working on it. I was encouraged to hear that there was some positive direction in the reduction of the number of pending complaints. That's great to hear, but it sounds like it's not good enough to where we can put the levers back at this point. So the LPC board, our members are stepping up. We've done everybody's kind of pitched in, and that's to their credit. I would recognize my board for their efforts with this. Dr. Taylor, anything on your end?
No, just excited to be a part of the largest mental health workforce in the country.
Love it. Psychology?
I mean, as we already kind of discussed, the main topic for us on the psychology board right now is the Texas psychology licensure examination. And, following an extended discussion of the research conducted to date, we've had public surveys, we've had input from the technical advisory committee. We voted to approve the scope of work and design recommendation for the project. And, we recognize that this is going to be a multi-step process. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort. And, again, just we've had a lot of folks involved in the process, and look forward to continuing, ongoing discussions and hopefully getting the legislative funding that we spoke about earlier. We also, on rulemaking, the board took up a proposed amendment to Rule 46510. So there's been more discussion on basis for scientific and professional judgments. So the board members had some debate about the proposed language, particularly in light of the ongoing litigation with the Charles versus Salazar matter. So that's coming up, and we're seeing that on the boards and adding to the discussion. And then We also discussed some inquiries related to Senate Bill 17 concerning the whole DEI in higher education and other legislative developments affecting clinical practice. So the board clarified that while members affiliated with universities must navigate those institutional requirements, the board's regulatory authority over private practice remains distinct from the statute. So we had some ongoing discussion. And Mr. Bridges or Robert, anything on the rules that you want to add or that I may have forgotten?
No, I mean, to Dr. Cartwright's point, the largest thing we've been talking about right now, the big thing is the psych exam. And so I appreciate everyone's voting on that today. And, as I keep telling people, this process started really about 2 years ago, and we're talking about another 4 to 5 years as a time horizon on this. So, I mean, this is something that is taking a lot of time, a lot of effort, not something that was jumped into lightly. So thank you again to everybody for the involvement on that. The only other thing I was going to add, and this is more just from a board makeup standpoint, we did welcome Chris Moose as a new public member on the psychology board. We've had some changes over there as well.
Very good.
About all I have, so.
Ms. Pryor, I'm going to put you on the spot as the social work representative. Anything going over at social work that we need to know about?
I don't think so. I actually missed the last meeting because I had death in the family. So
sorry.
I'm not up to.
All good. So sorry for that, for y'all's loss.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Okay. Any recommendations for agenda items for the next council meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Based off of Dr. Rob's comments earlier during public comment, is there any value in putting a review of court-related complaints on the docket for the next session?
I think it'd be fine to put it on there. We can have, because it would be, I was able to ask a couple of questions, but yeah, we definitely couldn't discuss that.
I don't know if there is anything we can do to stop the notice from going out, but I do want to recognize that the work that these individuals are doing is extremely high conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And, we do see, and I do not want to limit the public's ability to file a complaint whatsoever. I'm a strong believer in that, but I don't like the weaponization of our complaints process, especially when it comes to child custody, because it's just so terrible for a 6-year-old to get caught in the middle of something like that.
Yeah. And that was the point of the rule, is when people and parents were trying to weaponize and use the council or the boards as their appellate court to impugn, somebody who's trying to do their job. And not to say that there aren't times where things have merit. It's just, it certainly was being weaponized. I think it's worthy to put it on the agenda so they can be discussed. Or
what is the what is the focus, or what's the?
Just a review of complaints of the complaints process as it relates to an ongoing child custody case or something like that.
I'll say this: I wouldn't mind it being on the agenda to where at least we can clarify our position of what we're trying to do and how it's happening, because based on my question earlier to one of the comments, like what would you have us do? We have to and there was one other comment that was that people can't have complaints filed on them and during court point of work. Yes, that anyone can file a complaint for any reason whatsoever. Yep. It's up to us to dispose of it or whether it has merit or if it's going to be dismissed.
Yeah,
we have to accept everything and then figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. No, we can talk about it then.
Yeah, and I perfectly accept that we might not be able to do anything, or there might not be an action that we can take, but at least in a public forum we can discuss why that is,
yep.
And at least educate so that everybody knows that unfortunately this is one of those truths that we just have to endure.
Yeah.
There was so much that went into that. I don't want to re-adjudicate that rule.
No, yeah.
That's my fear is I want to make sure we're not moving towards substantive changes, because that was a lot.
No, I think the rule is sound. I don't think we need to revisit the rule. I think we just need to discuss how we're applying that rule and what the limitations are. Yeah.
And then putting it on the agenda allows us to legally notice
Correct.
it and
Gotcha.
discuss it. I would be in favor of that. I'm not in favor of reopening that rule because that rule was very hard fought, very hotly debated, and rightfully so. But and the other thing too is I think we're all we want the same thing based on the comment and what we're trying to do. Anyway, any other questions?
I take it that on the social work and LMFT boards that they'll be voting to bring someone up to the council, obviously. So I assume next meeting we'll have a couple of new BHEC members.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had tabled 5C, which is Daryl's review. We can go into executive session if anyone wants to browbeat Daryl in private.
Depends on how the renewal process goes in 2 years, Daryl.
We better go into executive session.
Do we want to? Do we vote on going into executive, or is that just something I do?
Well, I think you just kind of take a straw poll.
Does anybody? Do we want to go into executive session on this? If we want to, we don't have to. I can tell Daryl. I do think Daryl's doing a great job. I think that we have had to, certainly this past year had to navigate. I mean, a great many issues. Internally, externally, dealing with changing laws, changing court decisions, and then just the growing pains that come with an agency of our age. So I think Daryl has done an amazing job navigating all that, and has my thanks.
Yeah, I will say publicly or in an executive session, I think, Daryl, you've been doing a phenomenal job. I think we're lucky to have you. You navigate all of this extremely well. To me, it's kind of makes it seem like it's a really easy job. That you're just doing that good at it. So I appreciate you. I also appreciate you walking us through our silly ideas when we call you and say, "Hey, what about this?" And you're like, "Whoa, no, let's not, please, no." So I just appreciate your guidance and kind of keeping the ship together as we have done something Herculean that I don't think any other state has. Yeah. And I just love seeing Texas be a leader in mental health. And I really look forward to watching other states reach out to you and try to replicate what we're doing here. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
I also wanted to add, I continue to appreciate, Daryl, your level of communication with us as these issues arise and keeping us abreast of any changes as they occur. Communication is very important to me. So just really appreciate how communicative you are. And yeah, I think you're doing just an outstanding job, and couldn't be happier with the job you're doing. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
I agree with all of those comments that were just made.
Yeah. What everyone else said.
Me too.
Just coming on as chair, you've been a great help for me. Guidance. Definitely appreciate the advice and guidance. So, thumbs up for me.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other questions or comments? If anybody out in the public hates Daryl's guts, you can send that email to me, and I'll deal with that. Anyway, that clears the agenda. I'm going to go to adjourn without objection. Hearing none. It is, what time is it? It is 12:04, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,